The way in which we produce music is, and always has been, influenced heavily by the technology available, from wax cylinder all the way up to digital audio workstations that we have now. Anything is possible. However, it's important to record everything correctly and to think about the actual sort of front end process, as it were, recording of the instruments using mics, etc. What I'm going to do is I'm going to record a tune using a jack lead for my instruments. I've got two mic cables here. I've got a Shure SM58 classic vocal microphone. I've got an AKG C3000, which is an inexpensive condenser mic. I've got two mic stands, one of which is a stand here with boom stand, and the other is a floor-mounted mic stand. Now I'm going to record everything using just this stuff. I've got a pair of headphones to do my recording. Now I'm using a 2-channel audio interface, which you can find easily online for maybe £100, dollars or euros. And actually you can get a long way with that. You need a computer with a digital audio workstation, but it could be something free like GarageBand, for example, if you're on Mac, or you can get similar software if you're on PC. So you can actually get started really without spending huge amounts of money. Let's get started. To start with then, I'm using Logic Pro. Now this could be GarageBand for desktop, but this is what I'm using. If you look at the computer screen at the moment, you can see that I've got some guide drums along the top. This is what I'm going to start with. It's important if you're working by yourself. Now this is what this demonstration is about, just working by yourself. If you're working with a band, that's a bit different. You need all sorts of other things in order to be able to mix them and all of that. So this is just for solo musicians. If I press play, you will hear a drum beat. That's just an Apple loop that comes free with Logic, and you can use that. It's license free, but I'm going to use that to play all of my instruments to, and then I'm going to put drums on last. Now, a lot of drummers I know prefer to do it that way. They've got a complete tune, they come in and they play with a click track and the complete tune. It's hard for a drummer to play to something that's free. Ideally, there needs to be a tempo set. I've got a tempo of 116 here, and the first thing I'm going to do is to put the bass on. Okay, so I've got my bass. I've plugged it straight into the front of the sound card, now the audio interface. Now on audio interfaces you may find a button indeed that you press for, especially for guitars, and that's for passive pickups. And my audio interface has a dedicated instrument input. Now if you look at the screen, it's important to bring a tuner up. Even I've got perfect pitch, but it is changing as I get older. It's very, very good idea to make sure everything is absolutely in tune, or as good as you can get it. Now, if I just play a harmonic on the 12th fret of the E string, that's going to be fine. Small fluctuations are to be expected with any fretted instrument. And there we go, we're kind of in tune, and then you can check the bass with itself. Don't rely just on the tuner. That'll do me absolutely fine. Now, just to avoid confusion and avoid that sort of pretty pictures can put you off. Be aware of that. Now, I'm going to record. I'm going to leave some space at the beginning, because when I press play and I sit at the drum kit, I'm going to need to sit down and make myself comfortable getting ready to start. So actually, I'm going to start 8 bars in. I'm going to start at bar 9 and then just record my line from there. So I'm just going to press record on here, and then I'm going to go through and make sure that everything is going to work fine with my sort of music and the chord sequence and everything else. I've got to remember what I'm doing. Handy to have a piece of paper. I'm kind of not doing that, but I'm going to press record and I'll get a bar count in, and then we begin. So that was about a minute's worth, minute 20 of Knock on Wood by Eddie Floyd. Now, that's a great tune. I've just recorded that little bit of it just so that we can get started. Now, if you look on the screen, you should be able to see that my bass part has been recorded at a healthy level. It's important to check the level before you start. So there'll be a level meter somewhere on the audio interface. You don't want it to go into the red like you could do with an old analog tape machine, because you'll get digital distortion. So my next job is to do some guitar, to do some rhythm guitar. I've named all the tracks on Logic there. This is really important to do, because if you're looking around for audio files, it'll name audio recording number 358, and you don't want that. So guitar time. So here I am on the floor with my tiny little guitar amp. This is the Blunt Instrument VS20, great handmade little transistor amp. And I've got my Shure SM58 mounted on my floor stand here, and the cable plugged into the computer. Now, a bit about guitar speakers. All of the treble, all of the presence in a speaker is actually in the middle of the cone. So if you point the mic in the middle, you get a more direct sort of presence sound than if you were to move the mic to the edge. So I could do that. I could just move the mic to the edge like that. I'm going to go for something sort of midway. And I'm also not going to put the mic right up against the grill, because if you do that and the speaker vibrates, the grill and the mic might touch and you get those sort of unwanted sounds that way. Now I'm going to plug my guitar into it and just check some level on the computer. Now you've got the input level showing on the computer there, so I'm just going to play a chord or two and see where we are. Now I've got a snare drum here which I'm going to switch off, because I don't want that snare to rattle. While I'm recording. So I'm just going to put it so that the snare is upside down there. There we go. Now I've got reverb on the amp at the moment. If you do record with reverb, you can't take it off, but with a modern digital audio workstation, you can add reverb afterwards. So actually I'm going to remove it. Sometimes the spring reverb of an amp is nice and you think, oh, I really want to record that, but I'm just going to leave my options open here. Yeah, I'm happy with that sound. Level-wise on the computer, you've got the guitar input, which is showing in sort of highlighted mode at the moment. So, I'm going to set up some headphones. It's important with the headphone level to make sure that you've got exactly the right amount, not too little and not too much. If you have too much, you can end up actually not hearing the direct sound of your amplifier. Indeed, you may wear one headphone slightly off in order to do that. So if I just plug my headphones in, and then I'm just going to do a little sound check. Just to make it easier, I'm just going to kneel on the floor with the amp to play the part, just to sort of save a bit of time. It is important though, however, to be comfortable with everything that you're doing. So I'll switch the bass track off and the guitar amp on. Alright, so I'm going to go forward to bar 9 and just press record. Second part then, I'm going to put another line on. Now I'm going to make sure that I switch that one off. I've got to check that my input is correct. I actually want input 1 where my microphone is. And I'm going to just have a slightly darker noise. And do something like that. So just record something else along with that line. It's important to have sort of parts on here. Don't overcook things if it doesn't need to be done, but I quite like a little bit of sort of fills there. So here we go. If you want to have 2 bars in, then you could actually bring it 1 bar before, and then it'll count in from bar 7, for example. And I'm going to do that, just give myself a bit of time just to settle in. Okay, so that's the sort of second guitar part just to go with that first one. Now, the next track down, I've got guitar solo bits. Now, ideally, I'm going to put the vocals on first because I want the guitar solo bits to be sympathetic to that vocal part. So, time to set up my vocal mic. So here we are with my vocal microphone. I've just mounted it on this straight mic stand and plugged the lead in, and it's into channel 2 of my audio interface. I've left channel 1 on the guitar amp because I want to record some solo bits in a minute. So the more sort of efficient way of using those 2 channels that you can use, then the better. You don't have to keep setting levels. Now, there's one other small ingredient that I forgot to mention in the introduction, and that's this. This is a pop shield. Now you can make something like this out of a bit of stocking material and a coat hanger, but this one I think I got from an electronics store and it was about £8, so it's really, really useful. Now this mic picks up a lot of bass, it'll pick up lots of p sort of sounds, and it's very susceptible to wind noise. So if I just attach this onto the mic stand like so, ideally I want a space between the mic and the pop shield, and then a further space between my vocals and the pop shield itself, so that there's no possibility of those B sounds reaching that microphone. So I'm just going to grab my headphones and I'm going to sing a verse of this. Just make sure I get my headphone lead there, and make sure that the mic is at a comfortable height so that you're not having to crane or do anything like that. So you're singing straight into the mic. I'm roughly 10 inches away from that mic diaphragm. So, just going to look at the computer again. 1, 2, 1, 2. Ah, yeah! Yeah, yeah! Yeah, that's about as loud as I'm going to go. So, that's fine. Always set the level so that it gives that vocalist room to really, to really express if they so desire. So, I'm going to just go from bar 12, so it gives me 2 bars intro into the verse. You could listen to the whole intro if you like, just to pitch, but just to save time, I'm just going to record from there. Here we go. I don't wanna lose this good thing that I got, 'cause if I do, I will surely lose a lot, 'cause your love is better than any love I know. It's like thunder, lightning. The way you love me is frightening. You better knock on wood. Okay. Now, earlier versions of Logic used to tell you if it had gone into distortion or not. However, luckily, on the front end of my device here, it said that I had 0.2 of a dB before going into distortion, so I was really sailing quite close to the wind there. Ideally, make sure that you get a good sound check. Everything is basically at the right level. Now, of course, what you could do is you could just go back and play back what we've got so far. That's probably a good idea. So let's just listen to the beginning. That I got, 'cause if I do, I will surely sounds okay to me. Now I've got guitar solo bits, an electric piano, and then some backing vocals to do. And then what I'm going to do in the latter part of this video is just to do a little bit of mixing. And of course I've got the drums to do as well, and I haven't even put the tracks up for that yet. So I'll have to do that as well. So I'm going to go back and record a couple of guitar solo bits. Now I've still got the mic in front of the amp, no need to set the camera up there. But really this is more of a sort of production thing, where I'm going to put some guitar solo bits that just really sort of are sympathetic to that vocal. Now, of course, over the intro, I've got some scope to just put a little solo in there, but I don't want to go too mad. I don't want to start sort of getting all sort of busy for the sake of it. It can be really, really a very easy trap to fall into. So I'm just going to set the guitar solo bits mic up. There we go. Now I just need input 1. Okay, so I'm going to put some guitar solo bits along with that vocal line. Okay, so I think did I get away with that or not? Some of those lines were a little bit close to the vocals, but actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it, because we can edit bits out. If you've done a solo and you think, oh, that was great apart from that little bit, you may be able to do something with it. Now, at this point, I would say you can't fix things in a mix, as they say. If it's really not going to work, then you've just got to re-record it. But I'm going to go and put some electric piano on now. Now this is where your USB keyboard comes into its sort of own, really, because you can correct things afterwards should you make a mistake. So next stop, keyboards. Okay, now for some keyboards. I've just got this little MIDI controller here. It's nothing special. It's quite a nice little thing. And I've just plugged it straight into the back of the computer. And on the screen, I've got an electric piano. That's what it defaults to sometimes, especially on some versions of Logic or GarageBand. You just get an electric piano. It sort of underlines the importance of the instrument in the whole sort of musical genre, really. But I'm going to put some sort of sustain chords and something that just goes with those guitar parts. So I'm just going to go from bar 8, so it's going to give me 2 bars in, and see what happens. Okay, so I'm happy with that. If there are any little notes, or there was one little place where I think I might have just hit a note which sort of... That will come out in a minute, and I can find that. Now, I gave my ears a rest. I just had no headphones on at all. Just a good opportunity to listen through the speakers just to check that everything is there, which it kind of is. Now I've got some backing vocal parts next, which I'm just going to do some chords, just something basic, so that there's something else there to really sort of separate the verse from the sort of chorusy bit. So back to some BVs. With the backing vocals, I'm just going to put them in various places. Now, timing is really key here. If it's slightly out of time, if there's a problem with the alignment of your vocals, it's really going to show, especially if you've got vocals that are panned sort of left and right, you've got this stereo image. It's going to really get tricky if it's not absolutely in time. So I'm just going to put a few things here and just see what happens. Just double check. So I'm just going to do those three: thunder, lightning, it's frightening, and maybe do a unison at the end. So let's see what happens with that. Notice I've got one ear off, so that slightly off, so that I can hear my direct vocal. If headphone level is too loud when you're singing, there is a tendency to actually sing sharp, and vice versa. If it's too quiet, you can end up actually singing flat. There's some sort of Doppler shift with the sort of loudness of the volume that you get. So you've got to be very careful with your headphone level. Let's have a go. Let's have a go with this then. Blunder, I think I sang, which is yeah, thunder. Making sure that your consonants are absolutely right. That's really important. Thunder, lightning, the way you love me is frightening. Better look on wood. So just on wood at the end, just to emphasize that ending. So I'm going to do the next one now. As you can see on Logic, it has actually cut off very slightly the beginning of this. Now, usually a digital audio workstation will actually record from where you press record. It'll record silently a bar before. So we're going to have to drag those back. But hopefully that won't put me off the next one. So let's have a look. Thunder, lightning, the way you love me is frightening. Better look on wood. So I attempted some harmony parts there. We're going to have a listen to those in a minute and just see what happens. Alright, just get rid of that. Just accidentally opened up an edit window there, that's fine. Okay, just go for the third part now. Thunder. Well, why not? I'll give it a go. Thunder. No. Thunder, lightning, the way you love me is frightening. Better look on wood. Okay, so I accidentally sang more of that chorus than I meant to, but I could actually just edit that out if it was any good. Now, I'm just going to play this back, but I'm going to play the three vocals together. So I'm just going to solo these out to make sure that the timing, first and foremost, is right. Right, now at this point I'm just going to drag the beginning back slightly so that it captures all of those words, and you can see that they're revealed there. Thunder, lightning, the way you love me is frightening. Onward. Now there, I don't know if that was loud enough in your headphones if you're watching this on a smartphone, there were actually tiny bits of the track that were bleeding through into my headphones. We don't really want that, but actually you can edit this out. So I'm going to do that when I come to listen back. I'm happy with those backing vocals for the purposes of this demonstration. Actually, they sound okay. Now, lastly, drum kit. With two mics? Well, you can. Now I've got my drum kit set up here. I've got two mics only. I've got a mic on the front of the bass drum. So if I just zoom down here, you can see that there is a SM58 on the bass drum here. On the top here, I've got an overhead. I've got my AKG C3000, which is kind of looking over the drum kit. Now, how many mics do you need? Well, the answer is it's as long as a piece of string, but if you get the sound that you require from just a couple of mics, we're kind of in business, really. Okay, so having set up my mics, I've just checked my headphones lead is long enough, and then I'm going to try and play over this tune. Now, at the beginning, there's that 8 bars for me to sit and get sort of myself composed and ready to play. So let's see what happens. And press go. Here we go. Okay, here we go. Okay, so there's my drum part recorded. Now the headphones I had to have a bit louder because I was playing the drum kit, which itself is louder. I still had to monitor what I was doing. So I just hope that that cymbal crash, that cymbal sort of tail at the end doesn't reveal those headphones, but I can do some fading on the computer. So here ends the recording part. So I'm going to now have a little go at mixing it. Now, a brief look on screen, you can see that I've muted the top drum part. I am left only with the instruments that I've recorded. Now, just looking on the screen at the moment, I need to make sure that those guitars don't cut off. Because I had the same thing as before with those backing vocals. So I'm actually going to bring these two back there, so it's just before the instruments come in. The vocals, I'm going to do a similar thing with just a little bit of cutting off there, and then the backing vocals are okay. I'm just going to do this and this and that, just to make sure that I've got a completely clean ending. So I'm just going to separate these as well. There we go, get rid of the silence afterwards. What I can do is to put a little mute on the end of each of these tracks, just so that everything ends cleanly and I'm not ending up with the sort of spurious sounds at the end. Just a tiny little one on the backing vocals there. And then the drums I'm going to listen to in a minute, just to make sure that that cymbal decay is correct. So I'm just going to go from bar 8. Notice that there are no plugins on the computer at all. What you're hearing is exactly what was recorded. We don't want to go like a bull in a china shop with plugins just yet. Okay, that's a start. There's some reverb on that electric piano, which actually I'm going to just take away for the moment. That I got. So there's no reverb, it's completely clean. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with the drums and the bass together, because I want to solidify, solo that out. I want to solidify the sort of low end of the recording. So that's bass and the kick drum. But I'm going to have the overhead as well, so I can just start with bass and drums. So we recorded the kick using an SM58. It's not going to be the best microphone to capture bass, but if I bass drum, but if I just listen to the bass on its own, what I've done is I've just taken the ultra top end away, because I don't want any phasing between that bass drum mic and the overhead mic, which is more likely if you're at the top frequency. So if I just add the overhead, that's starting to sound like something. Now, of course, we're in mono. There's no stereo overheads here, but do we really want stereo drums? Well, you could, to a certain extent, pan the overhead maybe one way and then the guitar line or the rhythm guitar slightly to the left. So we just end up with some sort of spatial awareness of those drums. But let's just have a listen to the kick drum now with the bass guitar, just to make sure that we've got that balance. Can hear some other sounds there for some reason. Player error there. Okay, we'll have to live with that for the minute. I think that is external noises from outside my studio. Soundproofing. Just check you've got everything in place. But I'm going to live with that, because for the purposes of this demonstration, really what I want to try and do is to make those drums a little bit more punchy. Now, this is where you can put a compressor in. Now, I know I've boosted the bass here, so actually what I might do first is to put a compressor on, but to put it before the equalization, just so that I'm not sort of massively squashing that bass end. For me, now that bass drum is equalising that bass guitar. They're working together a bit better. It's a bit more punchy. So, just playing the other things back, what I'm going to do is just take the guitars down a little bit, and then the vocals, I'm going to just have a listen to those in context with the whole. Now, with the vocals, we want that line to be at the top. In terms of the top of the mix, this is what we're listening to. It's the vocal line. Everything else is backing it up. So what I'm going to do first is now this is very important with condenser mics in particular, is to roll off the bass end. The very, very deepest bass. You won't hear the difference because there's nothing in there, but it'll be picking up all sorts of vibrations in the room, all sorts of things which we do not want. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, and ideally I should do it with all the guitar mics as well, so it's a really good thing to start doing. You can cut and paste the actual setting if you want. I will do that, just copy channel strip setting, and then I'm just going to paste the plugins only, and the guitar solo bits as well. Paste plugins only, and I'm also going to do it on the overhead because it was the same mic and it will be picking up a lot of spurious bass end. This is where if you're listening to a mix you think, why does it sound all fuzzy and cloudy? It could indeed be that there's lots of sort of wobbly bass that you don't really want. So, I've cut all the bass end. Now on the vocals, I'm going to put a compressor in because I'd like to hear all the words above everything else that's being recorded. Now when you open up the compressor, you find yourself with a VU meter that shows when it's having to reduce the level. Now the idea here is to narrow the dynamic range of your vocal. So if you look, for example, on here, I've got quite a loud sentence there and a very quiet one there, and the ideal is to make them sound similar. That I got, 'cause if I do. Now, we have controls on a compressor. The threshold sets the level at which the compressor begins. The ratio sets how much it will compress. And then after you've done all that, there's something called makeup gain, which can correct for any volume deficiencies before the compressor to after it, so that we end up with a smooth result. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the ratio up to about 5. Now this means it's going to squash those louder sounds more, revealing the softer ones. I don't wanna lose this good thing that I got, 'cause if I do, I'll surely can now hear all of those lines a bit better. Now, my particular voice has got that sort of nasally, sort of about 2 or 3 kilohertz. So I'm going to open up the equalizer again. I'm just going to reduce that by a slight amount like that. Now, depending on the mic you use, I mean, the C3000 does have a little bit of a sharpness to it at this sort of range. So I'm just going to take that down a bit. Now, also on vocals, we need something called a de-esser. Now, what that does is it takes the S sounds away, or rather, it doesn't take them away, it reduces them. You'll hear this if you record this and put it onto a record and put it onto vinyl, you'll get this sort of real distortion where those S sounds occur. If you go really, really too far with this, you end up with a sort of a lisp, and you don't want that. Right, I'm going to put a little bit of reverb on these vocals. Now, the reason for reverb is that obviously you can separate those vocals from the rest of it, and also you get a nice stereo wash of your reverb. Now, beware, don't use too much. Awful. I'm going to take it down to really almost nothing, but a slightly longer reverb decay. Now, of course, the controls on Logic will be different from any other audio workstation, but the principles are the same. The vocals have reverb on, and you can tell, but it's not getting in the way of those words and the rhythmic delivery. The electric piano at the moment is a little bit loud for me, so I'm just going to take that down and then just have a listen from where I am. Got the backing vocals to look at yet. Right, those backing vocals I need to really, really ramp down. I also need to treat them a little bit so that they are kind of similar. In fact, what I could do is I could paste could copy the channel strip setting of the main vocals and just paste it onto each backing vocal like this. So that means that we've got, let's have a look, setting, paste plugins only. And then I'm going to take the vocals down by quite a long way, those backing vocals, see what happens with that. Now I've got those, the way you love me is frightening on those, on that top vocal that I did. I've got to get rid of that because I don't want that at all really. So I'm just going to get my scissors out, just cut there and cut there, and then just lose what was there. Now I could actually edit the backing vocals so that they only show when they've got, when they only literally are present on the digital audio workstation when you actually need them. Depends if there's breaths, but I don't think there really were here. I'm just going to cut there and then cut there, and then select that one as well and do the same thing with this. Now you can go really silly with this. It depends how much noise, spurious noise there is in your studio. Mine, I could hear there's something weird going on with the drums there, but for the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to have to live with it. Indeed, if you are recording to a click like I am at the moment, I could actually find some drums from elsewhere in the tune and actually cut and paste them over the top. But you end up sort of risking things like cymbal tails and sort of various little bits of timing, making it sound a little bit obvious. Right, let's have a listen to this. It's like thunder. Quite lucky with that cymbal tail at the end. I couldn't hear any of my headphone feed there, so I'm just going to cut the very end off and then put a fade on here. Put a fade on these drums. Just do them at the same time. There we go. Onward. And there we have it. you could spend all day mixing this, but I've got a fairly reasonable result. Now we've just got to make sure the master at the moment is actually a little bit high here. Now there's a few things you could do with this. You could actually put a gain stage on your master where you can actually apply negative gain, or you could open up the mixing desk pane and actually just take all of your faders down by the same amount. That might work okay, but you can essentially control that output volume. Now on the output itself, I want to do a little bit of mastering now. I need to make this sound a bit punchy. Now what you can do, it depends on your digital audio workstation. If I look at the multiband compressor here, what I've done there is to work more with the mid-range, compressing the mid-range with a little bit of bass. I've left the top end alone because actually it accounts for very little of the overall energy of the tune or any audio signal. And everyone forgets about the mid-range. We're all sort of thinking about crisp treble and lots of really low bass, but the mid-range does tend to suffer a bit. So I've got my multiband compression. What I've done is I've just made up any of the gain where I've reduce the threshold of the particular band that I'm working with and increase the ratio slightly so it squashes a bit more. But your ears are the ultimate judge. If it sounds all right, chances are it probably is. Okay, so lastly on the plug-in chain, I'm going to put a limiter. So that means that the overall level won't go above 0 or any other setting that you make. Sometimes I just go minus 0.2, so I'm going to a CD player, for example. You find that older digital converters actually start to sort of bottom out if you go right to 0 dB. So 0.2 below full scale is absolutely fine. And it's this control here, the output level. I was looking at the gain. Now at the moment that bass drum is pumping the output there, so it may be that my multiband compression, actually I need to just be a little bit more squashy with that bass drum. Maybe I'll just take the release time down a bit so that it's nice and tight, and then just see what happens with that. Okay, so now you have something that is quite energetic. It's making full use of the dynamic range of the digital system that you'll play it back on. And the next thing to do is to create a stereo file of it. So I've got to also just take off the very front of the drums there. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm also going to select all of the audio files that I've got and put a very small fade on those as well. There we go. Something of that sort. There we go, got a nice clean beginning. And also, there's a couple of 100 milliseconds before anything comes in. If you're playing on an old CD player again, it might not catch the beginning of the tune. So you've got to make sure there's a tiny little pre-roll, as it's known. So if I go from there, that's pretty good. So what I can do now is to get rid of the drum track at the top. I don't need that anymore. You can easily re-import it if you do. Now I'm going to select everything and then go to Bounce, Project or Section. Now, I want to keep this as a full quality PCM file. And I also want to have a little bit of silence at the end. Maybe, Yeah, 4 seconds. There we go. That means that when I'm importing this into iTunes or wherever it happens to be, you've got your appropriate gap before the next song. You can work this out, or you can do it again if you need to. It's a wave, 24-bit, which is what it was recorded in. The sample rate, 44,100, is a standard thing that most people use. Some people use 48, especially if it's film. And you can also get all of these different really high sample rates. There's no point in sampling it, exporting something at a really, really high sample rate because it wasn't recorded like that in the first place. Try to avoid MP3s unless you are just sending it as a demo over the internet for somebody to listen to. So now I've got that, I can just save it as knock on wood. Knock on wood. And then it will do all of its rendering, and it's doing all its reverbs and the compression and everything else. And that's done. And there we are. When we go to the desktop now, I can have a look at where my knock on wood. Here we go. And just look at the preview. Go to the end and just check that that's all right. Onward. And there we are. So maybe the ending might be a little too long, but you can go through and do it again. And there is my recording process. Just 2 mics and a pair of headphones and your instruments. That's it.